Walking the road of parenting is hard. It is filled with joy, and it is filled with struggles. We are okay to feel the way we feel, no matter how we feel about it. Learning to let go of negative judgment and condemning thoughts about our feelings is critical to being authentically yourself. Parents are often able to do this with their kids, but continue to struggle to be so kind to themselves in that inner voice. If this is you, you will love today's episode with Susanna Peace Lovell. She is the author of Your True Self is Enough. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dina Lynn Rosenbush. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned, because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. Welcome back. I hope you took advantage of your free ticket to attend the Financial Freedom 101 event last weekend. And if you did, I hope you loved it. So if you did, write me and tell me about it. I would love to hear. As I'm sure you've noticed, I really want to provide families lots of different resources that are pertinent to what you are dealing with now. I am guessing that an ongoing situation is that you become frustrated when your child doesn't listen. And sometimes you are wondering, are they being blatantly disobedient? Because, kids don't always do what we ask, right? But sometimes it's blatant disobedience. And sometimes we sit there scratching our heads wondering what's going on. Children understand things from their perspective. Sometimes the speech delay or communication delay can be missed. And when they're not listening, it might actually indicate that they're not processing information. That means the reason they didn't do what you asked isn't because they're being bad, but rather they might be taking the information in differently or in part. They act on what it is that they do understand. As listening skills change, so does obedience. This often overlooked fact will be addressed in a webinar on November 23rd. I hope you can join us. You'll find the link in the show notes. This webinar is going to be hosted by my friend and colleague Janine Tang. She's a fellow SLP, or speech language pathologist, and she was featured on episode 183. She's also the author of the book Play Dumb and Sabotage. I will be teaching with her being the host. And so you are all welcome to join me there. So if you missed it last time, you have another opportunity. So check the show notes and click on the link for Beyond Obedience, Unveiling the Power of Listening in Kids. I look forward to seeing you there. Now let's get into this episode with Susanna Peace Lovell. Welcome, listeners, to the Language of Play. Today we have an author, Susanna Peace Lovell. She is here, and we're going to talk about her book, which is an easy-to-read memoir and guide that drives home a story, a journey that is relatable for anyone who has faced challenges with kids. Her raw, vulnerable exposure of her real thoughts and experiences leaves your heart touched. You'll see the world and yourself differently. You will become empowered to change your relationship dynamic with yourself, your child, and others. It's a beautiful work that should be required reading for all parents. I love that she has written this book. And that was actually my review that I gave her. So I'm using that as your introduction because I truly, truly did feel that way when I read your book. So welcome, Susanna.
Thank you, Dina Lynn. That was so beautiful. I will listen to this over and over again.
I thought I'd
Myself.
surprise you with that. Yes, I read your book about a
Mm.
month ago. So I'm honored to beyond to belief here to have you here with me
Mm.
because it is really relatable and you take out the real and you show us what it's really like. You are vulnerable and real in it, and I love it. What inspired you to be that raw?
Yes. So, well, I feel like I have been through the ringer on this journey to be, very transparent with you. I am, raising a now 18-year-old daughter with myriad disabilities and diagnoses. And she's technically a legal adult now. So we've made it this far. I, feel like I need to get a prize for that. Um,
You do
but
deserve a prize.
I do, right? I think any of us on this earth getting to this point in parenthood. So I feel like, when my daughter Arizona, her name is Arizona, was first diagnosed at the age of 2.5, I just couldn't find a lot of support around me. I consider myself to be fairly resourceful and tenacious, and I still couldn't find the right communities, the right people, the right support, I mean, it was a very cumbersome ordeal. And I would say at every different stage and chapter, it was very challenging for me to find other people like me, in my community. And so as I have sort of grown into this community, I've learned that a lot of us, never really had the space or maybe the pride, I mean, or maybe the wherewithal to be able to really speak openly about all of the things that we're going through behind closed doors. And even at the time I was married to Arizona's father, we have since divorced, who had a different outlook on how to present her to the world in terms of like, well, we just don't want her people treating her differently, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I felt like my voice was very stifled. I felt like I couldn't reach out and sort of be authentic and real with who I needed to connect with. And so I just wanted to change that narrative. And so for me, it was really, really important to speak up at every turn, to be, kind of like the voice that I wish I had for myself back then, if that makes sense. And so I just feel like, abundance in this lifetime really flows when we are just speaking our most authentic truth, whatever that might be in this particular moment or in this particular season of our lives. I feel it can be so supportive and life-giving and transformative, even so cherishing. Again, these are all words that I needed,
Mhm.
wrapped around me, these feelings, in terms of just being able to, get through sometimes, 1 minute of the day.
Yeah, I've heard that from other parents too that have kiddos with multiple disabilities. Well, I'll say that I didn't have a child with a severe disability, and yet I felt like it was me that graduated high school and celebrate when they got to be 18. Like I was like, holy cow, I have done this. And when you've got extra challenges along the way and extraordinary challenges like you've had, yeah, the reward is also yours. You have also earned the badge that you got this child to adulthood.
I,
So,
yes, I
and
will take that. Hmm.
right away in the beginning of your book. So, if we ever do get this video out on YouTube, the listeners will see I've got little sticky notes over it, and I wanted to call attention to so many different things that you wrote. And so, in the time that we have, I'll try to call attention to a number of things. One of the things that you say right away in the foreword that caught my attention And you say, learn to understand your child rather than make them think, them do what you think is normal. So let me read that again because I stumbled. Learn to understand your child rather than make them do what you think is normal. Talk about that for a little bit, please.
Okay, so super fun fact, Dina Lynn.
Yeah.
Uh, so my daughter, Arizona, actually wrote the foreword. So
Excellent.
those were not my words. And it was our compromise, in fact, for me to be able to even publish this story with her blessing. So
Nice.
originally I had this great idea that, the book is going to be called A is for Arizona, and as you know, since you read the book, she's just listed as the letter A throughout the book.
Mhm.
She didn't want her name on the book. She's totally fine with me, talking about her. But in terms of the book being published, she just didn't want her name in it. She just didn't want, she wanted to protect her privacy in some way, shape, or form. And I said, okay. And so she was very adamant initially, like, well, I don't want anyone to read this. I don't want anyone to read about me. It's embarrassing and I'm so hip and cool now. And people might not think that if they, hear about my journey. And I said, okay, well, what do you think would make you feel more comfortable in order for me to get my story out into the world, my story raising you that I feel could be so supportive for so many different families? What about if you write a little forward and let the readers know what you would like them to know ahead of diving into this book written by me about us?
I love that.
So those were actually her words. And, she is this child,
She did a
young
great
adult.
job.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Young adult. She keeps reminding me, I'm not a child. I said, you will always be my baby. No. Um, yeah, she just has these, she has this delicious and uncanny way of just speaking whatever is like just on her heart or in her brain. It just comes out through her mouth. There is never filter, but really there is also just so much truth and wisdom. What's real for her in any moment, she will just let you know. That is actually very refreshing. you
Mhm.
know we need to work on sort of the social graces and thinking of where we are out in public, or who's around us. But for the most part, she really is like quite insightful about her experience, and what she wants other people to know
Mhm.
about who she is. And that has turned into a beautiful compassion that she has within her, empathy. It's yeah, it really blows me away because it's not anything that I necessarily instilled within her. She just sort of glommed onto that.
From what I read in here, I bet she did actually get it from you because that is part of who you are. That's how you've written.
Yeah.
Even when you write about the pregnancy part and, right away in the beginning of the book, one of the things that I have underlined here is when kind of like you said, that you would wish that these words had been spoken to you. And one of the things that you wish was you would tell this pregnant girl that it is okay to feel the way she feels.
Yeah.
And at the time that we're doing this recording, I have a daughter that is pregnant. And she's got a lot of feelings right now. And she's so surprised at her own feelings. In fact, she called me the other day and she said, Mom, I'm crying crocodile tears. I've never seen such big tears, and they even splash over my cheeks when I blink. What's going on?
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
Now, I'm not dealing with autism, and you clearly aren't autistic, and yet we still know that the feelings that we have are going to be the same feelings that Arizona has,
Mhm.
and how important it is to tell young moms that are pregnant, as well as kids that are growing up, as well as you and me now, as we are not pregnant, to
Oh,
that we are still and always okay to feel the way we feel,
yes.
period.
Yes. Yes.
So that is one of the many things you wrote that struck me.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that. I have to remind myself that often. Like it's
Hmm.
it's it's understandable that this is how you feel. It's understandable and it's okay.
Yeah. And even if we don't understand it, it's okay. But like you, I had a fair amount of programming growing up too, where you are okay to feel the happy feelings. But how dare you to feel the negative feelings and tell somebody?
Right.
Because you're going
Right.
to bring them down. So shape up, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
And that is not
Absolutely.
correct. It's not
Mhm.
really human.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
you do a beautiful job to explain your story at the beginning of your how you became the way you were and how you went into pregnancy as you did, and then how hard it was to transition in. And then, okay, so I'm gonna bring another quote up from your book. You were talking about the therapy that you had gotten, like after the evaluation, and you described the situation for Arizona when she was thinking about language as it's like there was a traffic jam in her brain and everything was running into each other and all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the number of parents that I've talked to that have kiddos with speech and language delays, especially auditory processing disorders and autism, where they say, why don't they listen?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you if that's what you've got going on? So I might be quoting you at some point because that's the best description I've ever heard. Tell me a story about that.
Yeah, so I feel like, well, speaking of, why aren't they listening, right? I mean, that was sort of me very early on with regard to parenting Arizona in terms of like just, you know, speaking to her, asking her questions, saying her name, and there being zero response, like zero response. She wasn't, she wasn't able to even answer a yes or no question until she was maybe 6 or maybe 5, 6, somewhere around there.
Mm.
Either way, it was a very epiphanous moment. I will tell you that. And so I was like, well, is she just stubborn? Like, she had language, she had expressive language. And so I think that was what was so complicated to, the pediatrician that I was like, crying in the office, like, what's going on? Like, I just feel like there's this disconnect with my daughter. No, 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 no. Listen, she's been speaking. She has, this number of words and, she has these phrases. And I was like, yeah, but she's like talking to nobody. You know what I mean? She's like talking to the wall in the other room. I can kind of hear this little voice. And so it wasn't until I, read somewhere about this traffic jam analogy that it just started to click in terms of, okay, so I'm speaking to her. She's probably, thinking about the light is so bright, or there's other sounds that she can hear outside, someone's cutting down a tree, there's a siren, there's all of these different things, like this, just this input that is just coming right at her. And so it's so challenging. It's like she needs to have like a one lane road. You know what I mean? Like a one way, one lane road, for this communication between me and her. Back then, that's what was so supportive for her. And I found, I know I'm sort of going all over the place, but I found that one way road to communicate with her in a way that was going to be receptive and reciprocal was actually through playing the piano to her, the words that I wanted her to respond back to me, the question that I wanted her to respond back to me.
Explain how you use the piano. I love this that you're doing what we call multimodality. You're bringing in rhythm and song and tones and you're using that in an entirely different way. So tell the listeners about that.
I didn't even know that word existed, multimodality, but I love that. Well, so I'm a musician, I'm a pianist. I was classically trained from the age of 4 until 18. And I, have a piano in my home. I've always found it to be a very therapeutic practice for me to just either bang out some Beethoven or, make up a song and so I remember just, singing songs to her. And, we had a lot of music in our family home growing up, but I just never thought about it as a way of communicating to her until I was just, I don't know, I was just like making up a song about something that we were doing. We were playing something and I started making up a song and I was like, something like, does Arizona want her doll? Something like that, right? And
Mhm.
she was like, want my doll, you know? So she started off, you know, being able to connect to the request through, you know, echolalia more so, but it was very much like this. It's almost like something turned on. It's like I saw this light bulb, you know, sort of in her brain, like whenever I put something to song. So I learned early on that if I wanted her to remember something important or be thinking about something important, or, you know, there's a transition coming up or whatever it is, when I needed her to learn my phone number because, you know, that matter of safety, right? I made up a song with my phone number. And
I
to
love
this,
that.
you know, she just 310, right? Da, 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 right?
Yeah.
So she just, you know, I just felt like, wow, that's so cool. It was fun to crack that little code. So yeah, and again, back to the traffic jam, it was like, no, we just need from here to here, you know, however that's going to work with my daughter's particular, you know, processing that's going on. Um, you know, I just tried everything until something, you know, felt like, hey, this can be supportive.
That is fantastic. I love your creativity and I love the courage you had to just try something. You know, when you don't know for sure what to do, just try something. And the other piece that I'm going to say is kudos to you for using your strength. Piano is clearly your
Mhm.
strength. And if all of us parents would use our strengths when we are parenting our kids, something will be a little bit easier because you're playing within your strength.
Ooh, that's so great. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I would imagine that stress would go down when you add music. Is that right?
Oh, 100%, like instantaneously. Well, I mean, okay, let me clarify that with it depends.
Yeah, that needs to be qualified a little bit because there's
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
kinds of stress and levels of stress.
And there are also different types of music that, you know, like
Mhm.
heighten my. So, for example, Arizona loves K-pop. Okay. She loves K-pop. I can tolerate K-pop. I don't love K-pop. So what can be very like regulating for her, calming for her is, you know, K-pop song in the morning on the way to school to get herself regulated for school, right? And I'm like, okay, it's too much for me, right? Too much. I do
It
volume
doesn't
down.
regulate you.
It does the opposite of regulating me. But the music that I like, the music that I'm drawn to, depending, you know, in the moment, you know, the season of life, it depends on, you know, whatever's going on with me. I can always access just like instant calm, instant peace with the right music, whether it's me playing it or not. You know, it's something that I forget. It's these like little, you know, bits of joy that can
Yeah.
be like, you know, scattered throughout our day. You know, driving to go pick up Arizona from her school. You know, sometimes will be like, do I feel like a podcast today? No, I just want to listen to some really good music and, you know, get me sort of in a particular mood or out of a mood or whatever it may be. But yes, so cathartic.
That's so good. I'm glad you do that. Now, one of the things that you wrote when finding the best learning environment for our children, um, and you learned that she needed to be tuned in with herself before she could tune in to others. Since we're talking about piano, now we're going to talk about a different kind of tuning in. So, your story around this is fantastic. And I
Mm.
would like to have you highlight about this idea of having your kids get tuned in to themselves before they can tune in to others.
Yeah, I think, you know, sort of what is underneath all of that is this, you know, this very, very big, strong piece of ourselves called our egos.
Hmm.
For myself, of what I feel like or what I think would be a good environment or a good situation for her. Okay. And again, we've been programmed most of our lives, right? We have all of these ideas and preconceived notions of what is cool and acceptable and good and right and all of these things. I, had to learn the hard way, although I'm so grateful for this learning that it is actually the opposite of how it should flow, really, I think, organically for each one of us on this earth.
Mm.
Um, in terms of like, okay, so who is this child? Like, who is Arizona at her very core? Intrinsically at her core, who is Arizona? And I had to learn who Arizona was from her, not from what I wanted her to be as I was, getting ready to become a mother and have 5 kids, right? Which, by the
Right.
way, I did only have one. So, and so learning from her to sort of tap into her world and see how, sort of what made her tick, what, sort of turned her on, where she seemed tapped in, tuned in, turned on. I had to really focus and pay attention to that because those were the things that I wanted to be able to share with potential learning environments and schools and programs that she would have access to as she became older.
Mm.
And that was really hard for me because again, she was an unexpected child in many ways to me. I had this vision and this dream, and it looked exactly so, and then it was the opposite of that. And so I really had no choice, really. Honestly, it was like I had either the choice of being completely numb to life, completely checked out of life, or completely like tuned into her, which then, had the beautiful side effect of me having to tune into myself. So
Yes.
it's this parallel journey of deliciousness that I'm so grateful for, but it has been so hard, so challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let me ask you, because that is actually true whether or not a parent has a child with a disability. We can be tuned out and disengaged, or we can just expect them to be who we want them to be and then find our disappointment in them because they're not going to be a mirror image of our expectation. Or we can decide to tune in to who they are. So, what would be your comment for how that would happen in a general environment? Because you're doing that with me, you do that with coworkers, and like you say, it causes you to tune into yourself.
Yes. Yes, and I agree with you absolutely wholeheartedly. Like, this is not just because Arizona is on the spectrum, or, this is not just a learning that is, only exclusive to this community or, disabilities in general. We have this opportunity actually with every single other being on this earth that we interact with at any sort of given amount of time, any place, any season. Like, maybe you are friends with somebody for 5 years, 10 years, you move on, sort of take off. So I feel like in order for us to truly be able to honor ourselves, it really starts there. And then we are able to then expand that compassion outward to, others around us, our loved ones, coworkers, maybe not so loved coworkers, whatever it may be, and like just people who are just in our sphere
Mm-hmm.
and in our environment because they have, and they could also be family members that aren't really our people, right? We don't know. So yeah, I just feel like the opportunity to really be able to what the opportunity is here is to really be able to connect with who we are at our very, very core. And that has been an ongoing life journey and process for me, still ongoing. I'm still uncovering so many different things about myself and my needs and my unmet needs, rather, that are just fascinating to sort of uncover, and but also so important for me to honor. That has allowed me to have a more sort of expansive, you know understanding and acceptance to just everybody. everybody, the man on the sidewalk who's screaming at somebody, or, the driver who's honking their horn and giving me the finger,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's about me. So,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, it's such an opportunity.
it is. And in your book, you have explained that so well. So I want to thank you so much for bringing this book into the world. It really impacted me reading it. I guess I connected to it really, really well. I related well to the way you described yourself, too. Yeah. So if you were to tell parents one thing that you would like them to grab a hold of from this interview, or maybe it's something you didn't say, what would be one main message that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, one of the beautiful, gems that has come from me being able to have this parallel journey with my daughter, Arizona, is that, I was able to quickly identify in her first, her wholeness,
Ah,
her completeness, right?
yeah.
Her sort of perfection, right? Her, not needing to be fixed, her not being broken, her not being, there's something wrong, right? So that, was a journey for me to honor her as that, but it was a much quicker journey for me to do that than for me to do that for myself. So I would just share and honor that, we are perfect, whole, and complete exactly as we are. Our children are, our surrounding people are. We all are exactly who we are meant to be, in terms of how, intrinsically, again, like we came into this world as, Susanna, as Dina Lynn, as Arizona, right?
Mhm.
And so just to honor that, but again, firstly with ourselves, again, such an opportunity for just so much awakening in this life. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And when we're saying that we're perfect in of ourselves, doesn't mean that we don't have room to grow. It just means that we can drop the judgment. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, the judgment, the shame, the feelings of unworthiness and not enoughness, right? Yes,
Hmm.
we are constant. I would hope that we are constantly evolving,
Hmm.
um, the rest of our, mortal lives, for sure.
Yep. As
So,
long as you are alive, you've got some growing to do.
yes, I have a lot. So,
Me too. Susanna Peace Lovell, thank you for being here with me on the language of play. It's been an absolute delight to have you.
thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you do.
Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review, and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.